Did you know? Adam and Eve were never real people. Their story only appears in the European Bible. It does not exist in any other sacred text in Africa, Asia, or indigenous cultures. Yet when Christians quote Adam and Eve today, they are not quoting universal truth. They are quoting a story written, shaped, and programmed by Europe. The original Hebrew text never presented Adam and Eve as literal individuals. In Hebrew, Adam meant human or humankind, and the story was symbolic, about duality, consciousness, and the balance of life. But when European translators created versions like the King James Version, under the authority of King James I, centuries of European culture, ideology, and control were encoded into the text. This version became a tool to program minds, teaching obedience, sin, and hierarchy under the guise of faith. Much of the Christianity practiced in Africa and the Americas today, especially among black communities, is actually the European version, imported and imposed through colonization, slavery, and missionary control. It is not the original Christianity that existed before European dominance. That older version, the early African and indigenous Christianity, focused on spiritual consciousness, communal living, ancestral connection, and direct experience of the divine without the rigid European frameworks of sin, hierarchy, and gendered control. Here are some examples of things unique to European-shaped Christianity that don't exist in any other Bible or older Christian tradition. Jesus dying on the cross for human sins. This idea is part of the European interpretation of Christianity. The original Hebrew texts and early Christian writings in Africa, the Middle East, and indigenous communities don't mention Jesus in the same way, nor do they focus on a legalistic sacrificial system. Early teachings emphasize spiritual awakening, consciousness, community, and personal connection to the divine, rather than obedience to a European-shaped narrative of sin and punishment. Adam and Eve as literal first humans, the original Hebrew texts and early Christian teachings treated humanity symbolically, not as two historical people. This literal interpretation is a European addition. Original sin and inherited guilt. The idea that every human is born sinful because of one woman's disobedience is a European doctrine, absent in early African, Middle Eastern, or indigenous Christianity. Male superiority based on Eve coming from Adam. European culture embedded this bias into the story. It is not part of the original Christian message. Daily prayer practices like closing your eyes, bowing your head, and asking a distant God for favor. These rituals were developed by European churches to create obedience and submission, not for direct communion with the divine, as practiced in original Christianity. Church hierarchy, tithing, and rigid morality rules. These structures are European programs to control behavior, not spiritual truths taught in African, Middle Eastern, or indigenous Christian traditions. Concepts of hell, eternal punishment, and guilt-focused theology. These were largely introduced in European Christianity. Early Christianity emphasized personal awakening, spiritual balance, and living in harmony with divine law, not fear and guilt. Every one of these examples shows how modern Christianity practiced by many African and black communities is actually the European version, imported through colonization and missionary control, and not the original Christianity, which was focused on consciousness, personal awakening, and direct spiritual experience. Final thought. While most of the Christianity practiced today, especially in Africa and the Americas, is the European-shaped version, there are still communities that preserve elements of the original pre-European Christianity. These include the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, which preserves early biblical texts, spiritual practices, and a direct connection to divine consciousness. The Coptic Orthodox Church of Alexandria, maintaining early Christian teachings focused on personal awakening, healing, and spiritual understanding, rather than European-imposed doctrine. Certain Middle Eastern Christian communities, like those following the Syriac Orthodox Church, which retain liturgy, teachings, and interpretations closer to the earliest Christian traditions. These communities focus on direct spiritual experience, communal consciousness, and ancestral wisdom, not obedience to European programs of sin, guilt, and hierarchy. They are the living legacy of Christianity before it was reshaped and colonized by Europe, offering a window into the original teachings of Christ's message, awakening the human spirit and understanding the divine within. Many Christians love to say that Christianity was in Africa first. Yet the reality is that most of them do not practice the original African or early Christian traditions. Even when they reference the Ethiopian Bible, it doesn't change the fact that what they are reading has also been colonized, translated, and interpreted through European influence. It is still not the fully original text or practice.